morning, everybody. Welcome to May 10th, my brother's birthday. Just want to hear what's happening in your markets, what's happening in the rest of the Northstar world. I'm going to start with you, Lauren, because I know that Singapore has had a rise in COVID last week and made some changes.
That's right. Yes, we've had a small rise in cases. Some community clusters have come up here, but the numbers are still very low compared to some of our neighbours here in Southeast Asia. Nevertheless, the government here has taken some very swift action. We've kind of reverted back to what the government terms as phase 2. So much tighter restrictions. Dining groups are now restricted to 5 people, down from 8.
Wow.
And of course, repercussions for meetings are such that the largest capacity, so we were previously allowed to apply to run MICE pilot events for up to 750 delegates. That's now been reduced back down to 250. And any event that has more than 100 delegates has to have mandatory COVID-19 testing on site, which can be quite a costly endeavour. So we've gone back down, but nevertheless, it seems to be full steam ahead here. The government is still, those restrictions are only in place for 3 weeks. Government is still encouraging people to apply for events with 750 delegates or more after May 30. When the current restrictions are due to ease. The same week the restrictions were introduced, we actually had some really great news that the Bloomberg New Economy Forum is coming to Singapore in November, and Elon Musk is among the very esteemed guests. The US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has actually confirmed his attendance at the Shangri-La Dialogue, which is a very high-profile security summit, which is happening here next month on the 4th of June at the Shangri-La Hotel. And they're actually going to create an event bubble at the hotel, which will allow the delegates to come in, move around quite freely, because they will all be, quite high-profile heads of state and so forth. So I'm, busily trying to weasel my way into that event. Registering and doing all the checks and balances that I can. So, even though we've got tighter restrictions, there's still a lot of confidence in Singapore and the safety measures that we put in place here.
The UK is looking in a good place right now. We had recently the Good Business Festival in Liverpool, which was a pilot event. 400 delegates attended. No social distancing, no mask wearing. And the purpose of that event was to observe behavior, essentially, to see how under those conditions people would mingle. Would they mingle much? Would they, return to the old ways? I think there was a lot of handshaking from our reporter, Holly Patrick, who went there. Right. She didn't see much hugging, but otherwise it was as per normal, people just sitting next to each other on, there was no distancing between the seats. And yeah, people were very happy just to mingle normally. There will be an update on this in terms of whether there's been a spike in infections. The scientists said,
did they have to get tested beforehand, or did they need? Okay.
Yeah, a test was needed beforehand, to a negative test. So the scientists are very, very confident, very, very happy that these were safe events. And they're not expecting a spike at all from these events. So we were happy to send our journalists there. But that same evening, there was a nightclub opened in Liverpool as well. So 6,000 people went to this, and just big rave, basically. So again, that was just to see what would happen. But again, the scientists say, everyone needed a negative test. These are very well ventilated buildings, etc. So the scientists were very confident there's not going to be a spike, but obviously we have to wait and see on that. What other news from the UK? I guess the other news in terms of international travellers, we have now a traffic light system in place with, I think it's about a dozen countries are put on the green list. including Australia and New Zealand, who aren't going to let us in anyway. So that seemed a bit.
Singapore's on the list.
Singapore's on the list.
On
Yeah.
the green list? Yeah.
On the
Yeah.
green list. Yeah. It wasn't a great holiday bucket list. It
Right.
was, apart from Portugal, it was places like the Falkland Islands and Iceland and Brunei and places like that, which aren't typically places people rush to go on holiday. So that was another big development in the UK. So those two things, international travel gradually easing, and the roadmap is going ahead as planned.
Beth, what do you see in business travel? Any movement? Any?
Actually, I have some good news, I think, moderately good news for business travel. We've had earnings reports from all the major publicly traded travel supplier companies. So from Delta and Southwest and Air Canada and IAG. And the sentiment among the executives at those companies is that business travel is slowly, gradually, but steadily returning. Let's talk about it. Since we have been talking about a traffic light system, many companies will place figurative traffic lights on their travel. Much of it will be yellow, and many companies are looking for pre-trip approval. There's going to be a lot of communication and collaboration between the risk and security departments and travel departments. So that's certainly to be expected. And many people, many companies are putting sort of the return to travel plans in place and putting decision trees in place. If one of the rules that I've sort of heard from a number of different places, and I'm not sure where it originated, but it's kind of being circulated. If your meeting is not as long as the travel you would embark on to get there, don't go.
Oh, wow.
Which is an interesting formula. It's kind of very succinct. And so if the meeting will not last as long as the travel, then consider virtual, and potentially there's a hard stop on that. Obviously, there are business reasons to go to, whatever meeting it may be. But, and so, there's always that exception that could be.
Are you hearing a number of companies doing that, or is that just?
I have heard a number of companies refer to this formula as if, it is a nice, succinct way to explain to a potential traveler, this is our rule of thumb. And I do hear over and over that networking is most definitely a priority for in-person, that, there's no virtual platform that has necessarily cracked that code in terms of being able to really facilitate a great networking experience. And we've used many, and we've tried many, right? So, so that's been singled out as a reason to travel. Certainly if those connections and those potential contacts are, high profile and very important.
There's a lot of debate on whether it's legal for an organization to require their employees to be vaccinated, if they're on site. Have you seen any discussion about whether you can require a traveler to be vaccinated or an employee to be vaccinated in order to allow them to travel?
What I have seen and the conversations I have had is that this is not a question about travel, and a travel manager and a travel policy would not be the place to manage that. This is an HR issue. It becomes very much a return to work issue for many types of workers. So a salesperson, for example, which would be a priority traveler because they generate revenue for the company. Can you require that person to get a vaccine to do their jobs? And so I do not actually think it's necessarily a travel policy type of question, and it really has to go to a higher level. But the truth is that these vaccines are emergency approved. They are not under sort of a regular vaccine approval at this point. And I think this is an opinion. This is not coming from a place of having spoken to a legal expert, but under those circumstances, I would find it very difficult to require a person to take an emergency authorized vaccine in order to work.
Yeah.
I think off the back of that, something that a lot of people have mentioned to me recently is the expectant rise of leisure travel, because we've all been locked down for so long. When, say, a partner or a spouse finally does get to travel for a meeting or for business, of course you want to come along, and of course that person, even if they're single, will want to make the most of it and, you know, tack on a few days. Of course, there's the rise of flexi work, digital nomads. So a lot of the event planners that I've spoken to recently are gearing up for that. They've, even their clients pre-COVID, they've said were really taking families and the partner program a lot more seriously. And they're expecting that to really take off again. A lot of the hotels, especially the resorts that have meeting facilities, are priming themselves for that rise.
The uncertainty still, I guess, is at what point in the future will international business events be a thing? When is it actually going to happen? Is it going to be the end of this year? Probably not. How late into 2022? And there's still a great deal of uncertainty about that, because what does it take to put on an international event, and how free does international travel have to be? If you're a big association and you have your own annual or biannual congress somewhere, thousands of delegates flying in from all over, that is still a huge question mark, isn't it? And it's very difficult to get the ball out.
We're doing it. So Northstar is doing that in September, the very late part of September. We will be hosting the business travel show in the UK, but we do expect that we'll have travelers coming in from across Europe and certainly attendance from the US as well. So hopefully those green lists will be getting longer.
Yeah.
That's it. I think there'll be lots of regionalization of meetings. I think meetings will be, you know, big international associations might just say, let's just have regional meetings and link them all up, rather than have one big main host city.
You know, how are we doing in terms of percent vaccinated in the US? I know we're not where we need to be. If 70% range is, you know, adequate for a herd immunity situation, we're quite far from that.
I would just say what I've looked at, which is the New York Times as is my source, but 46% have received one dose of the vaccine and 34% are fully vaccinated. So we're still right there at about only 1/3 of our total US population is fully vaccinated.
Right. Yeah.
However, on the bright side, if you are fully vaccinated, in terms of travel, there are no quarantines, there are no waiting periods that are being enforced right now.
Yeah. And that helps. That helps in terms of people wanting to travel, you know, and in terms of how travel is picking up, you know, I'm sure that you're seeing this too, but it's really the leisure that's picking up. And what we're hearing from the hotel side is that they are empty Monday through Thursday, and that's business travel and meetings. They want the meetings and the business travel back. They need that.
Correct. And definitely in those earnings reports, we were hearing kind of a drumbeat throughout. We need the business travel and meetings business to drive our rates. We're definitely seeing average daily rates that are lower because the business travel and meetings groups do pay those higher rates.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. We're just putting out a new pulse survey tomorrow, so we should have that in a few weeks, see how things have changed.
Register now for Northstar's upcoming events on our website, northstarmeetingsgroup.com.